on November 8th, our next guest could become the first Democrat and best skateboarder elected governor of Texas in more than 30 years. His new book is called We've Got to Try How the Fight for Voting Rights Makes Everything Else Possible. Please welcome the El Pride of El Paso, Beto O'Rourke. It's a great pleasure to have you here. I admire you and the things that you've been doing. And as you probably know, your state, Texas, is in the news today because the governor pulled another stunt, busing people who came into this country up to Kamala Harris's house in Washington, D.C. And Doug Ducey from Arizona has been doing that. Ron DeSantis has been doing that. What do you make of that when you see that happening?
I just know that we are so much better than that. Sending these migrants to D.C., to Chicago, to New York, now to the vice president's house, isn't doing anything for them. It's not doing anything for us. It's not addressing the underlying challenge that we have in terms of our immigration system. The last time that we rewrote the immigration laws of this country, Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States of America. We know that folks are coming here to work. They're coming here to join family. They're coming here to seek asylum because to return to their countries of origin would mean certain death for them or their kids. So how about Texas, a border state, a state full of immigrants that has made us so successful and strong and also safe? What if we led the way on ensuring that if you want to come to this country, you have to follow our laws, but on our part, we will lead the way in rewriting our laws so they reflect our values, our interests, our needs. There should be a safe, legal, orderly path for those who want to come to this country to do better for themselves and do better for all of us by their very presence. I want to make sure that we lean on that.
But I think some would argue that there is a safe, orderly path. The path just isn't wide enough, and then there are people who are basically trying to flood the gates, which you can totally understand, but it's such a complex problem. How do you address that when you have people who are coming in without going through the proper channels?
So I can be in La Mesa, Texas. I can be in Brownsville in the Rio Grande Valley, and I can meet with farm workers, very often undocumented. I can meet with the owners of those farms. It is so complicated to sponsor an immigrant to come and work a job in Texas that no one born in Texas will take. The wait time, if you want to join a family member and you live in Mexico today and join that family member in the U.S. is 20 years if you want to do it the right way and get in the back of the line. The adjudication for an asylum claim is 6 years. For 6 years, you might be living in a refugee camp in squalor in Ciudad Juarez with your child, hoping that nothing will happen to them. What if in all of those instances, we address them with solutions? A Texas-based guest worker program, lifting the visa cap so you're not waiting 20 years in line. And instead of waiting 6 years for an asylum seeker to get an answer, how about 6 weeks? And if the answer is yes, welcome to America. And if you do not pass the bar for entry, then you've got to return back to your country of origin. The answers are there. We just need the political leadership and the will to get that done. And that's part of what this election in Texas is about. We're either going to have these theatrics and stunts on the border that have done nothing to help anyone, or we're actually going to lead on an issue that we know better than anyone else. And I think Texans are going to choose leadership.
Is this what... I know you, one of the things that you do is you go door to door and you really talk to people. And you talk to people who don't necessarily agree with you. And I would imagine this is a subject that comes up a lot when you're knocking on those doors. How do you find, like, what percentage of the people you visit say, get out of here, I don't want to talk?
It is so incredibly rare that people are unkind to you in Texas. We're good people who want to do right by and for one another. And the things that I'm talking about, like an immigration system that actually works, it's hard to find the Republican who will take the other side of that argument, or investing in our schools, or paying our teachers enough so they don't have to work a second or a third job, expanding Medicaid. We're the least insured state in America. And not only do we lead the nation in children who die of diabetes, because Greg Abbott has refused to do anything about gun violence. That is the leading cause of death for children and teenagers in our state today. There's not a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent in our state who is okay with that. And when you have the common courtesy and show the basic respect of being there where someone is and having this conversation, speaking but also listening, I find that we have so much in common. People want to reject the extremism of Greg Abbott and the leadership in Texas. They want change, they want something better, and they're going to vote for it on November 8th.
When you go into these houses, do people ever not let you leave? Like you're like, I got to get out of here now.
I remember knocking on a woman's door in El Paso, and she invited me in and made me a cup of coffee and told me about her grandson, who's a Marine, who she is so proud of, her daughter, who's a school teacher, who's one of these teachers working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. We never really talked about policy. I never laid out my plan or tried to persuade her to vote for me. But I knew something was working because I went into a diner the next week. This guy approached me and he said, "You knocked on my grandmother's door." And when I and my 32 other cousins were at her house on Sunday having menudo, she made each one of us promise to vote for you. So what we are doing is working. And we've got...
You knock on so many doors. Do you ever knock on the same door and they're like, "You again?"
Yeah. We actually have 92,000 volunteers now.
Unbelievable.
Signed up to knock on doors. We're going to be knocking on millions of doors in the most voter-suppressed state in the union. So it's harder to vote, harder to register to vote in Texas.
Why is it so hard to register to vote in Texas?
There's no online voter registration. There's no same-day voter registration. There's no automatic voter registration. The criminal code is extraordinarily punitive. And last year, Greg Abbott signed a so-called elections bill into law that is keeping millions of people away from accessing a ballot box. More polling places have closed in Texas than any state, and most of those closures are concentrated in the fastest-growing Black and brown neighborhoods. So our volunteers, those 92,000 heroes in Texas, are on the doors of the people targeted for suppression and are going to make them the margin of victory when we win this thing in November. So there's some poetic justice to that in Texas.
Beto O'Rourke is with us. We'll be right back.
Follow the law that's on the books, ladies and gentlemen, that says that you can buy not one, you can buy 2 or more if you want to, AR-15s, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and take that weapon that was originally designed for use on the battlefields in Vietnam to penetrate an enemy soldier's helmet at 500 feet and knock him down dead. Up against kids at 5 feet. It may be funny to you, mother, but it's not funny to me, okay?
That's Beto O'Rourke in Mineral Springs, Mineral Wells, Texas.
Yeah.
I love that. I do, because it makes me feel like somebody is angry as I am about this. And that I think we all are, as you touched on before, like the idea that people can walk into a store and purchase military-grade weapons and then bring them into a school, and then we see it and we're all mortified and still, I don't know how long it's been since that event in Uvalde, which is in your home state, but we've still done little about it, little to nothing about it.
It was 16 weeks and 2 days ago that those 19 kids and their 2 teachers were taken from us, killed, absolutely defenseless against a guy who was able to legally purchase 2 AR-15s, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, but also defenseless against a governor who's done nothing, despite the fact that we've had 5 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history in the last 5 years just in this state. You and I were talking during the break. I've got 3 kids, a 15, a 14, and 11-year-old. They started this school year in El Paso with nothing having been done to make it any less likely that they or any other kid in the state of Texas will meet the same fate as those children in Uvalde. The answers are before us. We could, for example, raise the age of purchase for an AR-15 from 18 to 21. Republicans, Democrats, gun owners can all get behind that. A red flag law that allows law enforcement to intervene before it's too late, or just having a universal background check so that when someone buys a firearm, we can make sure they're not going to be a danger to themselves or to anyone else. These are things that we could do, but we can't do them when we have a governor who's more interested in the wishes of the NRA than in the lives of our kids. It's another reason that we need change in the state of Texas.
Yeah. And speaking of lives and kids, in Texas, they have very, very strict laws regarding reproductive rights, some of the strictest, I think, in the country. And it's just crazy that people have to leave the state if they would want to get an abortion. I mean, it's just, I never imagined in my life that we would see this.
Yeah, Greg Abbott's abortion ban begins at conception. There's no exception for rape. There is no exception for incest. It's taking place in a state that's already at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis. You foreclose opportunities to make reproductive health care decisions. You're also foreclosing the opportunity to get a cervical cancer screening or see a family planning provider or a doctor of any kind in the least insured state. Women are dying, black women are dying at 3 times the rate as white women in the state of Texas, and he's gonna make it worse. But here's the thing. Texas women won protection for this right in the first place in '73. Jane Roe, Sarah Weddington, Linda Coffey, her 2 attorneys, prevailed upon an all-male United States Supreme Court. Texas women won it 49 years ago. Texas women are going to win it back in 2022 when we win this
You got to vote, and that's the message on your book, which is called "We've Got to Try: How the Fight for Voting Rights Makes Everything Else Possible." I hope that people get angry enough about their rights being taken away, about the fact that their voting rights are being limited. I mean, nothing would make me want to vote more than knowing that people don't want me to vote. And I hope that that spreads and that people feel that and understand that. And thank you for bringing attention to it. It's great to have you here.
Absolutely.
Beto O'Rourke, everybody. This is his book. It's called "We've Got to Try." We'll be right back with Death Cab for Cutie.